Hey guys, welcome back to the show and happy December. We're in the home stretch towards the holidays and the end of the year. Can you even believe it? Like, I can't believe that a year has gone by again. Anyway, I promised you in the last solo episode that I recorded that I would give you some insight into the retreat that I recently attended in Sedona. And it's the third one that I've attended. And every time I bring interested members of my membership community to join me at the retreat. And we'll be doing another one in May of 2025, at the beginning of May. So I'll be opening that up again and potentially bringing Katrine back on the podcast to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that goes on in the retreat in more detail than I'm going to do today. But there's some really innovative stuff that we do over there. It's all around this whole concept of longevity, health span, and optimizing the body's performance. And so I thought I would share some of them with you, because whether you come on a retreat with me or not, I would say these are modalities are definitely something to keep an eye out in the world, in wherever it is that you live. So I'm going to describe to you a little bit of what's a day like at the retreat if anybody comes with me. So what we do is we basically start our day with yoga, and usually outside. And this time it was a little bit cooler because it was in November, so a little later. So it wasn't exactly sunrise yoga, but it was pretty darn close, and it was pretty beautiful. I mean, Sedona is a spectacular place. I don't know if any of you guys, if you haven't been there, Google it, and what you see is actually what Sedona is. It's an unbelievable place. It is the land of vortexes and crazy energy. And the area where the retreat is held actually has a bylaw where there's no outdoor lights allowed after 10 o'clock at night, which means that the starry skies are next level. And if you are one of these people that lives in Montana or one of these places away from big cities, you're like, yeah, whatever. I see beautiful stars all the time. But if you're like me and you live in a big city, I mean, honestly, even when we go to our lake house an hour and a half outside of Toronto, we do not get the darkness that you get in a place like Sedona. The only other place I've ever been where I've seen that degree of darkness and that level of stars was when I was in Morocco in the desert. And so we went glamping in the desert for a couple of nights, and the stars there were also next level. Anyway, I digress. We're looking to reconnect with nature, right? That's part of what we all want to do when it comes to optimizing longevity and health span. We all realize that a lot of the biohacking strategies that are being developed, a lot of the technology, a lot of the things we talk about day in, day out is about how do we bring nature back, right? How do we bring ourselves back to nature? So when we're in Sedona, we really have an opportunity to do that. So we start with yoga. We almost always do a hike at the end of the day. Obviously, it depends on people's energy levels, but there's a funny story about one of the hikes that led to a different therapy that I ended up having experience with that I've never done before. But I'll leave that for later. But basically, we hike, we do yoga, we eat amazing home cooked food, not too much of it actually, which is interesting. You don't seem to need as much food when you're on these types of retreats. And generally speaking, we're in bed by 9 o'clock at night. So this is not the have a glass of wine at the end of the day retreat. This is the purge your body, not purge your body, but really allow yourself about 5 or 6 days, depending on how long you stay, 5 or 6 days to really slide into a different rhythm. So we're up super early in the morning because most of the people, if you're coming from the East Coast, you're going to wake up naturally in the morning, earlier in the morning anyway. And we ended up almost always going to bed super early at night just because that just seemed to be the rhythm we were in. And we were getting up for yoga early, and then we were having these hikes and we were doing treatments all day long, and it kind of takes something out of you. So anyway, let's get into some of the treatments that we had the pleasure of experiencing. So right out of the gate, the first thing that happens when you sign up for one of these types of retreats is you hop on a call with a medical doctor and Katrine, and they do a full assessment of where you're at, what you're needing, so that they can customize the daily treatments and the daily IVs. And so the IVs, the foundation of the IVs is, in this case, we're doing NAD IVs anywhere from 3 to 5 days, depending on the individual and their needs. For me, this time, I had done 5 days of NAD in the spring. We decided probably I didn't need 5 days this time, so I just did 3 days. But what I also did is I did 2 treatments of EBOO, which I will explain to you what EBOO is. Some of you may already know. Many of you may be sitting there scratching your heads going, I don't even understand what she's talking about. So with the NAD, going back to the NAD, very often the doctors and the clinicians will include other nutrients with your NAD IV. You may finish off with some cerebral lysin. You may finish off with a cocktail of nutrients and vitamins. Sometimes for some people, it might be it just varies from person to person. It's always tailored to the individual. But at the end of the day, you're always feeling pretty darn good at the end. Now, I will tell you for NAD, if those of you who don't know too much about NAD and have never done NAD before, it doesn't feel great while you're doing it, right? So the first rule of NAD IVs is you walk in on an empty stomach. That's rule number 1, because for whatever reason, when you're doing when you're having an NAD IV, you get this, the physiological reaction is kind of like your stomach is flip-flopping a little bit. So people will often feel a little bit nauseous, or they just might feel a little bit off. Now you can regulate that. You get your own little regulator on your IV, and you can slow down the drip. And by slowing down the drip, you can really mitigate that kind of feeling that can be a bit uncomfortable. Once you've done NAD IVs for a while, you start to learn to kind of, I call it riding the edge. So you kind of push up the volume to the point where you're not super comfortable, but you're not completely uncomfortable. And so you kind of work that edge. Now, interestingly enough, some of the tools that are accessible to us while we're there that make a big difference in tolerating your NAD and getting through that IV faster are things like the Nano V, which is you sit, and it's basically a device that delivers structured, easy water. You inhaling it through your nose, and it helps with protein folding, correcting DNA damage, and it actually really, really helps the tolerability of that NAD. The other thing that seems to help a lot, and I noticed this from the first time, is having access to PEMF. So pulsed electromagnetic frequency. Katrine has these cloud mats, KLOUD mats. I'll put a link in the show notes. And you get to either sit or lie on one of the cloud mats while you're doing your NAD. I like to time my IV so that I'm sitting on the mat and I'm doing the Nano V at the same time. So breathing that in. And I find that between those two, it just kind of balances out and soothes my system so that I can tolerate my NAD a little bit faster so I can get through it more quickly. And which is, by the way, it's not like it's a race, but I only have so much patience. And after a while, I just don't want to be sitting there anymore. So the benefits of NAD, just to be clear, is so NAD is a coenzyme that is found in all the living cells of our bodies. All right. It is crucial for keeping the cells and the body working properly. And we know that as we age, NAD levels drop. And NAD depletion very often will kind of trigger the onset of aging-related dysfunctions and disorders. So I did another deep dive into NAD IVs the same year that I did that episode with Katrine. And that was the first episode of that year in January of 2022. It was on January 4th, 2022 with a doctor by the name of Craig Conover, who actually is the guy that informed a lot of the protocols that Katrine delivers at this retreat. So, if you want to kind of deep dive into some of the benefits of NAD IVs, you can listen to that episode. Again, we'll put that link in the show notes of this episode so you can deep dive. And some of you may have also heard that NAD IVs are used for people who are have addiction issues, and it can be super helpful there. And then obviously the other things that NAD is responsible for is energy production, It affects gene expression in a positive way, as well as cell signaling pathways. So for me, I come off this retreat feeling amazing. Like my energy levels are always pretty good, but they're even better when I come out. Now, I only did 3 NAD IVs. What else did I do while I was there? Was I just sitting around kind of chit-chatting with the girls? Nah, not on your life. There's a whole lot of other therapies and procedures and tools that are available to us. I, of course, had my Katsu bands in tow, so I was using my Katsu every single day. But also, Katrine now has a Flowpresso. Now, Flowpresso, I did an episode with Deirdre DeStrong. I think it was last year. We'll link to it in the show notes. I'm actually going to write that down now. Flowpresso. We'll link to that episode in the show notes. It is an unbelievable tool in terms of calming the nervous system, moving the lymphatic system as well, like lymphatic drainage and movement. It is just next level. So we have access to that as well while we're there. And then other therapies that are available are, Katrine has basically a collection of body workers that are next level. So we had access to craniosacral therapy, and this is the second or third time that I've worked with this therapist, and she's unbelievable. If you've never had craniosacral therapy, it's one of these therapies where it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot going on. The practitioner starts really by starts at your feet, then cradles your head in their hands, and just through energy starts to work with the energy in your body. I know it sounds woo to some of you, but to the rest of you, I'm telling you guys, it is unbelievable. You just kind of float for an hour or however long. I couldn't even tell you how long it was. I rarely look at the time when I'm there. And it just realigns your energy systems in your body. And it is next level relaxation, healing, and rebalancing. Now, a new therapy that I was not familiar with that I got access to this time is called, and I'm looking for my piece of paper because I always forget the name of it. It is called Nei Tsang. Nei Tsang. CHI, one word, chi like energy, Nei, NEI, Tsang, TSANG. Now, this is an offshoot of Qigong, interestingly enough. And when I first heard about it, I was like, yeah, I think I'm a pass, right? Because what it involves is the practitioner is working on your abdominal organs and is moving around the energy by manipulating the organs and the fascia and the tissue. It's all about working with emotions that get trapped in the tissues and ultimately affect how your organs function. Now, I don't know about you guys, but my idea of a good time is not having someone with their hands buried in my gut. It's just not a thing. Now, first of all, I know that probably sounds painful. It's not. It's super gentle. I would say that the first treatment, I had two, maybe 3 treatments with Lulu. And I would say the first one, I zoned out after about 15 minutes and I came to, not from pain, but I just kind of drifted. And it was the most relaxing, gentle, unbelievable treatment I've ever had. And it's partially working on emotions, but big part working on the nervous system and working on the body at the same time. So it's working through those layers of tissue, working through the tension, identifying areas where like energy is caught. This is all about the body keeps the score business, guys. This is all about the tensions and the traumas that are trapped in the tissues that affect how your organs function, right? So really, really fascinating work, very deep. And like I said, next level. There are Nei Tsang practitioners around the world. They're not, there's not tons of them, but I will also put the website for Nei Tsang on in the show notes. And if it's something that you think you want to explore, definitely check it out because it's really, really interesting. Katrina obviously also has fantastic massage therapists, and they're amazing. But you guys all know massage therapy. The next thing that the next therapy that I did, and actually this is going back to IVs. Sorry, we're going to bounce around a little bit. And this was EBOO, or extracorporeal blood ozone and oxygen, or oxygen and ozone. And it's kind of like, it's a little bit like dialysis. So what happens is you're sitting in a chair, your arms are out to the side. So what basically happens, you're sitting in a chair, one arm out to each side. There's an IV that's put into, let's say, to one arm that is taking blood from your body. And then the IV in the other arm is bringing it back to your body. What happens in between those two things is that the blood runs through a machine. It runs through a physical filter that is 0.1, I believe that is 0.1 microns is the filter. And then it is oxygenated and ozonated, and then it is brought back to the body. So what's really fascinating is seeing the color of the blood when it leaves, which is very, very dark red, and then watching it come back when it's been fully oxygenated and been given medical ozone. And now it's like this bright, bright cherry red. So it's super oxygenated blood. Now, the advantages of this is that you can basically, it helps to remove toxins. That super oxygenation ultimately can help to neutralize free radicals, also can help to kill pathogens, particularly viruses. I don't have the results yet, but I did a microplastic test before and after the EBOO. So I'm not sure what my microplastic load was going in and if the EBOO was able to bring that down. But at some point in the future, I'll be talking about this test and I'll be talking about my results. What also happens is the medical ozone stimulates the NRF2 pathway, which is your master regulator of antioxidants, antioxidation, detoxification, and cell defense genes. So this ultimately can revitalize the immune system. It balances NAD, so it's complementary to NAD, as well as being very anti-aging. So I did 2 of those. So basically, I did an EBOO, then I did my 3 days of NAD, and then I finished with a final EBOO. And after that is when we got into the really fun stuff. So aside from the hands-on therapies and the IVs, the other things that Katrina is able to offer is rejuvenation treatments. And by that, I mean, we have people can choose from a menu of exosomes as well as VSEL treatments. Now, what are VSELs? So VSEL stands for very small stem cells, basically. So these are pluripotent, quiescent, and they are activated during stress and mobilized into circulation. Now, they exist in your blood as well as they've been detected in different organs. And what's fascinating about these guys is that, number one, they're your own. So there's none of this worrying about genetic material from other places or the quality or whatever. They are naturally present in the blood and circulation. And like I said, as well as in multiple tissues, they have the ability to differentiate into adult counterparts of stem cells. So they can basically kind of grow up, right? They're with you from the time you're small. From the time you're born. They routinely replace diseased tissue and ensure regeneration to maintain lifelong homeostasis. Now, this is out of a paper that was written by an organization that works with these VSELs. So I'll put a link to the paper in the show notes as well, but it's really interesting paper on the safety profile as well as the potential benefits of these VSELs. And they, like I said before, they have the ability to differentiate into tissue. Now, what's really, really important is that they work a lot like something else that I talk about a lot. I talk about bioregulator peptides a lot. Bioregulator peptides seek to restore homeostasis. They want to bring the body back into balance. Well, guess what? V cells do the same. It's all about restoring balance. It's all about bringing organs and tissues back into balance where they were once before. So the V cells, can be, so basically the way it works is you do a blood draw. The blood is centrifuge at a very specific rate. There's a fraction of blood, the plasma with the V cells is removed, isolated, and then those V cells are then irradiated with a very specific red laser, and then they're reintroduced into the body part that we're looking to rejuvenate. So it's actually kind of interesting. When I bring Katrine onto the podcast, we will most likely be talking much more deeply about V cells. The way that I've used them in the past, the first 2 times I was at the retreat, I actually had a vampire facial with the V cells. So this involves having 1,000, I'm sure it's not 1,000, but having a lot of injections with a teeny tiny needle into your face, bringing the V cells into the face so that to rejuvenate the skin and hopefully stimulate the production of collagen and elastin under the skin. This time I didn't go there. I didn't go that far. What I did do is I did microneedling, like professional grade microneedling, and then the V cells on top. And I would say that my skin, I mean, I've gotten a lot of comments on my skin lately. The skin is left glowy, right? So it basically rejuvenates. And these benefits will develop over time. Now, for people who come to the retreat also have the option. The nurse is trained in doing O shots, P shots. They have access to people who will do joint infusions, joint injections for rejuvenation there as well. And I also did an IV with my own V cells. So doing an IV with the V cells, again, seems to be super helpful as an anti-aging strategy. And, time will tell. I certainly haven't been sick in a while, but I don't get sick that often to begin with, but definitely there's immune balancing benefits. There's all the anti-aging benefits. They're dealing with oxidative stress and all the things. Now, I had said no to doing a joint treatment. As luck would have it, the universe had a different plan in mind for me. And this is where things started to kind of get interesting. I was supposed to leave Sedona on the Saturday at the end of the retreat. And on the Friday night before I left the retreat, a gentleman by the name of Dr. James Hart came to visit me and offered me the opportunity to attend a full week of alpha brain training at the BioCybernaut Institute. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard about the BioCybernaut Institute, but the BioCybernaut Institute is the first, Dr. James Hart is the man who developed alpha brain training that is offered by many other people, well, a couple of other places in the industry. Dave Asprey first worked with James Hart at BioCybernaut before developing his own 40 Years of Zen program. So Dr. Hart is he's the OG in this space. And he basically came by and offered me a spot in that week's alpha brain training. What's a girl to do? I called up my husband and explained to him rather awkwardly that I was going to be staying in Sedona for another 8 days. Let me tell you, that conversation did not go over well initially, but my husband's a rock star. He came around within a few hours and life was good. Now, back to that VSEL stem cell treatment that I didn't expect. So the next day I go on a hike with Katrine, and don't I take a step off the trail to get out of the way for someone and hit a patch of loose rock on an incline that I didn't see and wipe out and slam my knee into the ground. It is 3.5 weeks later. And I think the hole from my landing in the knee is still trying to heal. I still have a scab there. It was quite a fall, but I left out one of the craziest therapies that I got access to while I was there this time. And it was where Katrine introduced me to her osteopath, who she's been telling me ever since I've been going down there, you've got to meet this man. I need to get you in to see him. You must meet him. You must meet him. And I was like, yeah, osteopathy. I don't know. I mean, I didn't know that much about osteopathy at the time. Now I know. And I'm telling you guys, next level. As a matter of fact, this practitioner is so next level that I'm having him come on the podcast in the next couple of months, and wait till you meet him. He's amazing. But the couple of the treatments, and one of the women who came to the retreat with me has a practitioner in New York who was trained by this osteopath. And one of the many things that these guys offer is something called neurotherapy. And neurotherapy is not osteopathy in and of itself. Osteopathy is really it's almost like a medical discipline if you think about it. And they're dealing with all of the different tissues in the body. So the fascia, the muscle, the tendons, the ligaments, the bones, the alignments, the energy. The osteopath is a master at detecting where energy blockages are happening, where there's restrictions, and in helping to basically open these things up and free them up again. But the neurotherapy takes it to the next level. What prolotherapy is injections of a very short-lived anesthetic that's actually used in dentistry. It's called Procaine. And by doing this injection into restrictions, so it could be into a muscle that's kind of knotted up, they will often inject acupuncture points. What that does is it basically relieves that if you will, the muscle essentially gets trapped in this endocycle driven by the nervous system, right? So you've got the nervous system, everybody's kind of in a knot. So these are the knots in your body that you can never seem to get rid of. Or it's that shoulder injury that you kind of get it better, but it's never fully better, right? And so very often what happens is you get these patterns that build up. You get these restrictions that happen in different muscles or different energy centers. And by doing that Procaine injection into that area, it breaks up the cycle. It breaks the cycle. And sometimes it takes more than one treatment. Sometimes it takes several treatments. In my case, I would say that my left shoulder has been a problem for me for a really long time. And ever since I had this treatment, and I think in the shoulder and around the shoulder blade, he must have done, I'm going to say 6 or 7 shots. I'm no big fan of needles. And I will tell you, it was crazy. Like it felt not super painful. It wasn't super comfortable either. But basically, I must have had 7 different injections around that shoulder blade. And now if I go into child's pose, my left arm, it almost feels like it's longer than my right arm. My right shoulder, which is my good shoulder, now it feels restricted compared to my left shoulder. It's crazy. I'm telling you guys, it's kind of next level. So I'm going to bring him on the podcast because I need him to tell you guys in much better terms than I'm telling you what this is all about. But this therapy is truly unbelievable. This is also the branch of therapy where you've heard of people having injections into their stellate ganglia for stress, for nervous system regulation, also in the vagus nerve. And I had both of those on the second day, which I wasn't exactly sure I was going to go there. But, once you're in the business that I'm in, I'm like, all right, well, let's do this. I've heard about it, so I may as well experience it and tell the crew about it. And it's a little bit otherworldly. One thing that he told me, and I'm sure that many of you know, but if you don't know this, if ever you go to someone and you're having your stellate ganglia injected it can be really good for anxiety. It's really good for chronic pain. It's good for a whole bunch of basically resolving nervous system issues. The only one that there really is research on is the left side. There's no real research on the effects of injecting on the right. The other thing is you never want to have both sides injected at once. So if anybody tells you they're going to inject both sides at once, you just thank them kindly and walk from the room. Okay? Because if you have both sides, what happens when you get one side injected is it's almost like a paralysis. So your tongue gets really numb. You kind of start to see double. It's a little bit of an out of body experience. And there's a danger if you do both sides at once that it could somehow affect your breathing, right? So if you do one side, no problem at all. If you do 2 at the same time, there could be an issue. So you never want to let anybody do both sides at the same time. Anyway, back to this experience. It was phenomenal. It was amazing. Like I walked out of there feeling a little bit out of my body, but really just super relaxed. It's hard to explain, but I would say that I just as relaxed as I've ever been. Walking, like if my legs felt like they were freed from my hips, my arms were moving properly. It was actually quite remarkable. And I've since gone back to the gym and things just feel different. So I highly recommend it if you can find a practitioner like this. And I will introduce you to this practitioner in the next couple of months. We are going to be recording in January. Really excited about this. So watch for that episode, probably February, March of 2025. Now, back to that treatment that I didn't know I was going to have, which was having my VSELs reintroduced into my knee. Because of course, when I stepped on the loose rocks and I smashed my knee, the first thing I thought was, oh my God, I've just undone all the amazing work that this osteopath did, rebalancing, like opening up my hips and balancing things out. So I went back to him. He checked out the knee and started poking around and basically said, you've got a fair amount of degeneration in this knee. So basically I decided to have stem cells injected into the knee by him. And I'm going to tell you guys that knee feels awfully good. It's going to take a couple more months to get the full benefits, like rejuvenation injections, like with stem cells or very small stem cells. Usually you're looking at 2 to 3 months before you can really tell what happened, or how much benefit you got. But I would say a month out and my knee feels pretty good. Now, I felt pretty awful for a while because of the fall, but it's feeling better than it did before the fall now. Now, about that BioCybernaut Alpha brain training business. So this was 6 full days, 12 to 15 hours a day in the BioCybernaut building. Your phone, you hand over your phone when you walk through the door. You don't see it again until you walk out the door. You have literally no concept of time because there's no windows. All the windows have been boarded up. You spend a fair amount of time in a room by yourself with electrodes on your head, basically practicing how to get into alpha, how to generate alpha waves using emotion and life experiences. I don't want to tell you guys too much, but basically you're tapping into your emotions to deal with life experiences at a subconscious level, trying to basically release the trauma, release the angst, move into forgiveness so that you can be happier and lighter on the other side of it. It's 6 long days. I'm not going to lie. This was tough work. It was really intense. And I hope to bring Dr. Hart onto the podcast in the next few months to talk to us a little bit more about alpha brain training, because he is the man at the end of the day. This is his baby. He wrote a great book called The Art of Smart Thinking, if you're interested in looking ahead. And there's a BioCybernaut Institute in Sedona, and I believe there's another one in Germany. There used to be one on the West Coast in Canada. I don't think it's open anymore. But this alpha brain training business is really quite something, because you spend a week really focusing on yourself, focusing inwards, thinking about your life, thinking about all of the events and all of the things in your life that, that kind of maybe these are experiences that have remained stuck. You think you've let them go. You think you've forgiven yourself or forgiven people in your life, and probably you haven't exactly. And you go through these beautiful exercise of facing the articulating what the experience was, understanding all sides of the story, and then moving through a process of releasing all these negative emotions. It's quite beautiful. It's very intense, and it was quite something. So that was my week in Sedona that turned into 2 weeks. And so, like I said, I said I was going to share the experiences. I wanted to share with you some of these therapies, because I have to say that if you get a chance to access some of these therapies, then definitely I really recommend them. Now, of course, you have to vet your practitioners and make sure that they're good at what they do, because at the end of the day, when people are putting hands on you, you want to know that they have experience and that they've there's different degrees of proficiency in every profession out there. So when it comes to people putting hands on your body and moving energy around and dealing with organs and tissues and all these things, you want to make sure that people know what they're doing. So obviously you need referrals and all that kind of stuff. If this is the kind of thing, if you're sitting there listening to this going, oh my God, she's completely lost her mind, then this is not for you. But if those of you who might be interested and might be intrigued in learning more about this kind of stuff, then definitely reach out to me. We'll promote this episode on Instagram. You can reach out to me on Instagram, and I can fill you in and put you on a list if this is the kind of thing you might be thinking that you might be interested in. We have another one coming up in May. And if you guys have tons of questions about all this stuff, then again, let me know, because we'll get Katrine back on the podcast and we can do a podcast together answering some of your questions. And I will also have the superstar osteopath on the podcast to talk about some of the many amazing things. I just basically scratched the surface on the stuff that he does. So, okay. I think that's it for today. And also, of course, Dr. Hart, I'm going to try to get him on here to talk about alpha waves, theta waves, gamma waves, talk about brain waves, and why we want to develop this skill of producing alpha waves when we want them. So, or even at rest, frankly. So thank you so much for being here, you guys. I really appreciate you. I'm recording this actually on American Thanksgiving. As a Canadian, there's no turkey in the oven for me. We celebrated our Thanksgiving about a month ago. So I want to a belated happy Thanksgiving to you all. And we have a couple more really cool solos coming up in December. We're going to do a retrospective on 2024 and what were the podcasts that you guys found the most fascinating, what the most beloved kind of topics were, what really caught your imagination, and then we're into the holidays. So thanks so much for being here. Make sure to check out natnidham.com, the website where you can sign up for my newsletter, and you can also learn more about the membership community, the BSP community, which is a really cool place where I get to interact directly with the members, and we do some really neat things together. So thanks so much. And until we meet again, bye-bye.